You're listening to Releasing Trauma, a survivor's podcast. And now here's your host, Tracy Osborne. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Today, we are talking with Sandra Cooze, and we're going to be talking about that, that word, trigger. That word that we all have to deal with as trauma survivors that, just kind of pops its ugly little head up whenever it really wants to. We just never know when it's going to come, what's going to set it off, and how we're going to respond to it. So we're going to learn more about how to handle all that today. Sandra, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tracy. It's so great to be here.
Well, I am happy to have you here. So, before we dive into the topic of triggers, I'd like to learn a little bit about you and about your story. So tell us about you.
Okay. Well, I'm a trauma survivor. Used to be, I guess I should say, because there's no trauma left. But I've had quite a journey. I was molested when I was 12, sexually harassed at 14, sexually bullied in school between the age of 16 and 17. I was sexually assaulted multiple times between the age of 19 and 25, and I was raped at 22. And then after I was raped, when I went to see a psychologist, in my first session with him, he dismissed me with the words, "I think you've already worked through it all. What am I supposed to do?" So I had to find my own way into healing. And I did. And now looking back, I'm so grateful for that because now I found my passion and purpose in helping others. I'm now a certified coach with focus on trauma and transformation. I'm a certified traumatic incident reduction facilitator, which is one of the most amazing modalities no one has ever heard of. I'm a Reiki master and teacher, and I'm a published author.
So I want to hear more about what the traumatic incident reduction facilitator means. What is that?
It's a modality that was created in the 80s, and it was specifically designed for people who suffer from trauma and PTSD. It's, in essence, it's trigger release through conversation. So I basically guide my clients through releasing trigger after trigger after trigger in a fast but gentle way.
Is it kind of like cognitive behavior therapy or something along those lines? Or
yes, it's a little along those lines, but more like coaching, but only because I ask questions, and that's where it ends with coaching. So I don't throw nitbits in like I would in coaching. It's very structured. It's 3 steps, and they're always the same, so it's predictable, which helps the client to feel safe. Once they've been through the first round, they know what to expect, and it will always be the same. So the session would basically start with the initial session, the intake session, where we talk about everything that was going on and decide what subject we start with. Now in TIR, we look at person, place, or situation. And the first session then is unblocking, where we just talk about the item that we chose, just basically what was going on, what's coming up, and this already releases small triggers, like mini triggers. And that's what we want. We want it to be gentle. We don't want to rip it out and go in full panic mode because everything is coming to the surface. No, we do it gentle, but quickly. So then the next session sequence is called unblocking, which is a series of 20 questions. Now, usually we don't even get to the 20 questions. The unique thing about it is that each question will be asked repeatedly until the answer is nothing else comes up. So basically, by asking the question time and time again, which yes, can be really annoying if you're trying to suppress your trauma.
Yep.
I had people yell at me, swear at me. I've heard it all, but it's okay. That's how it is.
That means it's working.
Yes, it is. And that's my cue that we're pretty close to releasing that one trigger. And by asking the question repeatedly, I give the client the the chance to really look at one thing from so many different angles. You have to look at it like, usually what really is our mind is right on the top. And once this is released, the next piece comes up, the next trigger comes up to talk about and be released, and then the next one. I have it so often that clients tell me, wow, I completely forgot about this. Because now it comes to the surface, and while they talk about it, it's being released on the spot. So when we go through the unblocking questions until they get hardly any answers are left, there's nothing coming, then we know that the client is ready for the last step, the traumatic incident reduction, where we go into the actual incident. And the client just talks about it over and over and over and over again. This will help the trigger to come to the surface and be released, and the trauma is basically just as important as what you had for breakfast. So it's really released, it doesn't matter anymore.
It's almost like a desensitization in a way.
No, we're not desensitizing it. We are releasing.
Okay.
So yes, I guess you can put it that way. But really, if you look at it, if you put your fingers together, your hands together, and you see one side is a trauma, the other side is the emotion. Once we unlink the emotions, they're gone, and the trauma falls away, and it's just a faint memory. So we're not desensitizing the body, we're releasing the emotions that's attached to the story, because the story is not what matters.
Right.
The story is part of our life story and will always be. But if we unlink the emotions and they disappear, the story has no emotional value anymore.
Okay. I understand. Excuse me. I think, when I say desensitization, that's kind of what I meant, was the story just no longer has any effect on you. It doesn't, it's just a story.
Right.
It no longer brings up emotion. Like, there's no emotion tied to it. And I know that I have reached that by telling the story over and over and over again. Exactly. It's just like, now it doesn't even bother me.
Yeah.
So, let's talk about these pesky triggers. And, they just like to pop up whenever they feel like it. So how can we go about beginning to, kind of control them?
Well, it's really not that hard. When I work on my own triggers, every once in a while I still have this odd trigger come up. We all do. Whenever we grow, we outgrow the person we used to be, and that means releasing triggers that were okay for now and aren't anymore. So, but trigger release is really important. Really, it's very important, yes, and it's very simple, straightforward. It takes some practice, of course, but you will get a feeling for when you're being triggered. Mm-hmm. Like when all of a sudden your emotions take over and you just yell at your spouse and he has even no idea what just happened. But that's a trigger. And first thing, it is okay, because a trigger shows you what needs to be healing within you, because your husband or spouse partner who just triggered you, but he's not the reason. He's just the catalyst. So, which means first you have to understand what you're actually feeling. When we're being triggered, we have so many emotions come up at the same time. It's hard to really differentiate them all, but they're all masking an emotion that is underlying. So we have to determine how we feel. Do we feel unheard? Do we feel angry? Angry is a mask for pain. So why do we feel pain? Do we feel not good enough? We have to understand what exactly we just felt in this very moment. And then when we calm enough, we think back about that trigger and then follow it. We follow the emotion. So we think, okay, where did I feel like this before? And we let this emotion guide us until an image pops up from, let's say, 2 years ago when we had an argument with our mother, for example. And then we say, okay, so why did I feel like this? Because she made me feel not good enough. It's part of our upbringing as women, right?
Right.
Not good enough. So, and then we say, okay, where else did I feel like this before? And then you continue following the emotion until you get to the root cause, which usually is in the childhood. for most of us. And once we understand that, we send love to our younger self, and with that, release the trigger. Now, sometimes this means the trigger is gone, but oftentimes it means it gets less and less and less the more we work on it, the more we understand it and release it. Because like I said, a trigger is just showing us what we have to heal within ourselves. That's all it is.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. And, you know, I've had triggers pop up, just the oddest ones. You know how different smells will trigger a memory or they'll trigger something. Well, for the longest time, SpaghettiOs. The smell of SpaghettiOs. I still to this day can't stand it. I don't know how anybody eats that crap, but the smell of it just, you know, it just really bothered me. And for a long time, I thought it was just because I didn't like the smell. And then I was able to actually link it to a memory of an abusive babysitter that I had. And once I was able to link it, you know, now when I smell SpaghettiOs, it's just gross. It doesn't bring up the memory. It doesn't bring up the emotions tied to it. You know, it's just gross. And how you eat that stuff, people, I don't get it. My kids love that stuff, and it's just ugh. But that's a side note there. And you know, and I've had other things like that too, where you know, some kind of an odor, a scent of lotion or cologne or something they'll just spark up emotion in me. And I'm kind of like, whoa, wait, what? And I have to really go in and dive in and investigate and find the memory that it's attached to in order to be able to process and let it go.
Right.
So, you know, once you kind of, I think, go through the process a few times, it gets a little easier to go through the process, but it also gets a little easier, I think, to, you know, recognize that you're actually feeling triggered and not just feeling emotional or, you know, something like that.
Yes. Well, here's the thing, emotional. I mean, every emotion is valid. And the negative emotions that we don't want to feel are more important than the positive ones. Because again, the negative emotions show us what needs our attention. We wouldn't feel upset if we weren't triggered about something. We wouldn't feel sad if we weren't triggered about something. You know, so the negative emotions are more important and they show us so much value because they tell us, hey, this is what you need to release and you will feel better. You will feel more happier, more ecstatic. So we should all just allow our emotions to be what they are because they're part of us and not try and push them aside because we don't want to feel sad or upset. No, we feel as we feel for a reason. And if we can embrace that, releasing triggers is going to become so easy because we allow ourselves to be who we are, including our emotions.
That makes perfect sense. We are definitely emotional creatures or emotional beings. And excuse me, I've learned, you know, that's definitely one thing that I've learned is instead of trying to suppress your emotions, you know, let them go through, let them process. You know, maybe depending on what the emotion is, maybe you might want to suppress some, you know, if it's anger or something, you may not want to, you know, start punching the walls or something like that. But you still need to let it out or else it's going to just get kind of stuck in there and it's going to grow and grow and grow. So how do you find, you know, triggers with relationships? You know, when one person gets triggered, oftentimes they tend to take it out on their significant other or on other relationships.
Yes. Well, this is one thing that I love working with my clients on because it's so easy to shift that. I mean, when we are in a relationship, both partners come with their own baggage, the emotional baggage, their own upbringing. You know, let's say the guy, sorry guys, was brought up not having to lift a finger because mom loves her children and does everything. So they don't think that they would have to contribute to the relationship because they have a girlfriend or a wife to take care of it like the mom did.
Right.
So they bring this into the relationship. Now, the woman brings into the relationship taking care of her partner. And she does everything up to the point that she is totally exhausted. Was my story. Was. And so at some point she just has enough and she breaks down and argues and yells at him, why don't you do anything? You're so lazy. And the partner doesn't even know what's going on because it has always been like this all his life. So, which means the partners both have to learn how to really communicate and talk about what they need. The worst thing in a relationship is we do not want to ask. You know, as a wife, I always want to make my husband happy. But I never ask what really makes him happy. I just assume. And then when I ask, well, how did you like dinner? Because he didn't say anything. And he was like, nah, I don't know, it wasn't really my favorite. And I got triggered because I thought my cooking wasn't good enough. You know, and then he didn't understand why I was so upset. And this is like the communication. So when we're in a relationship, first thing we should ask, okay, what makes you happy? And not be afraid of the answer. Simply because if what makes our partner happy is not what we thought, doesn't make us a bad wife. It just means that we didn't know things about our partner that are helpful now. Say, for example, most partners don't think that when the wife is cooking to say, thank you, that was delicious. How this will make us feel, you know, so totally happy when someone says the cooking was wonderful. Partners don't think about that because it doesn't cross their mind. But if we tell them that this is what we need in order to feel good about ourselves, you know, we need this from our partners to hear that.
Right.
And they know, and then they can change their behavior. Always say, look, I bring in the groceries, you know, I really would like for you to stand at a door and take them from me so I don't have to carry them to the whole house. Help me with that. Unless the partner knows, he won't help, and we just be upset every time for him not standing at the door waiting for us because he doesn't know. And it's the communication, so we really have to be dead honest. Same with triggers.
Yeah.
It is so easy to help our partner through triggers if we know how. It's simple. You know, rather than like being in an argument and seeing that a partner is triggered, take a step back and say, okay, I see you're triggered. Let's take a deep breath. How can I help? What do you need? Instead of feeding into the trigger by being triggered ourselves. So we really have to take on, say, an elevated perspective of it. Like, they're triggered. We're not the reason, we're just the effect. So what just happened? And walk our partner through the trigger like I just said we do to ourselves.
Right.
And this will be first empowering because we know we can help our partner if the partner's open to it. It takes some practice, but it works. And it's really empowering in the relationship to just communicate, be honest, say when something is wrong, when something you don't like, just be honest. What's the worst thing that can happen? You trigger your partner. Boo-hoo, that's from his childhood. So then you talk about it. Okay, why is this triggering you? Your mom did that. Well, I'm not your mom. So we have to, you know, really talk about it, unravel it.
Yeah. Yeah. Communication in relationships, definitely key. And, you know, when you were talking, yeah, I'm sitting here grinning and kind of chuckling because I am bad. And I know to communicate. I know, but, you know, when I am, you know, for example, cleaning the house and my fiance is sitting on his butt watching wrestling videos and I get irritated because he's not helping, but he has told me in the past, unless I ask for help, he doesn't know what to do, or he doesn't know that I want help because, you know, sometimes I don't want help cleaning. It's, you know, it's a cathartic thing for me, but sometimes I want to just power through it and, you know, So when I'm standing there folding laundry or, all of that, and he's just watching videos and the steam starts coming out my ears. I have to remind myself that that's my fault for not communicating what I need. He's a guy. He doesn't have ESP. They don't do subtle hints or anything like that. So
no, they don't.
Unless I flat out say, I need you to do this, or will you please do this? I have nobody to blame for that, for him not helping, other than myself. And he's getting better at asking, do you need help? What can I do? But it's a work in progress.
It's always a work in progress.
Always.
But it's nice that you both notice, so that's a step in the right direction.
Yeah. And I recognize that when I'm getting irritated, I'm getting angry because he's not helping. I can't take that out on him because it's not his fault. It's my fault. So it's
not necessarily why are you being angry? It's a trigger.
Yeah.
So why are you sometimes happy to do all the work yourself and sometimes you're not? So what else is going on in your mind? What is triggering you at this moment?
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. I need to kind of look at that and figure out what's triggering me.
Yeah, I guess communication is key. And being respectful. So naming names, even in your mind, should be stricken from relationships. Respect should be at the top of everything.
Absolutely.
Because once we really make sure we don't call our spouses names or talk to them badly to our friends, then the whole dynamic changes because the respect level is higher. Mm-hmm. And that's very important in a relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you talk down about somebody, it changes the way you feel about them.
Exactly.
Even if you're just in a bad moment or something. But if you really talk down about somebody, it sticks in your brain.
Yes.
And kind of just sits there and festers. Sandra, thank you so much for coming on and, just kind of sharing a little bit about your story with us and reminding us that, triggers, they happen, but they don't have to control us. And, that we may not be able to control when they pop up, but we can definitely control how we react to them.
Yes.
So
take some time, but it's definitely doable.
Absolutely. So I appreciate that. And listeners, you can learn more about Sandra on her website, riseaboveyourstory.com. Definitely check out her book. Tell us about your book real quick, Journey to Yourself.
Yes, my book is called Journey to Yourself, How to Heal from Trauma. And it's book 1 of a trilogy. I'm working on the second one right now. So I really go through the whole journey of yourself, how coming back to yourself. And How to Heal from Trauma is the first one. It starts with my story, little part. The rest is all about me picking trauma apart, like really explaining what trauma really is and what it isn't, why we feel the way we do. Then I have a nice journaling technique. I have room for notes. I have exercises. And I basically challenge my readers to start their own healing journey. Because it's really not that difficult. Once we understand that trauma really is nothing to be afraid of, it loses its power over us.
Very true.
We can heal. It's just understanding. And that's what I'm trying to do with my book.
Really That's wonderful. People. That's wonderful. So listeners, definitely make sure you grab a copy of her book. I will have everything in the show notes. You can just go over to releasingtraumapodcast.com and pull up Sandra's episode, and all her contact information will be right there for you. So thank you again, Sandra, for joining us. And listeners, thank you as always for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure you hit subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss a show. Be sure to check us out on our new socials on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.